It's been a minute since I recorded my last video, and the reason for that is I'm on bed rest. How did I make it here? Against everyone's advice. So that's the reason for me not posting and now not being in bed. Anyway, sometimes when I talk about unfunny things in a funny manner, I sort of slip into a British accent. That makes it easier for some reason. It didn't make it easier for my ancestors, but well, anyway, hi, welcome to this video. I haven't posted for like a couple of months, and I thought that I would do. I can't let go of the British accent. Yeah, so I thought that I would do a little recap of all the books that I've read in February and March. Summer's here. This feels so pleasant. I love the summer seasons. My birthday comes during the summer season, and obviously, um, as people who got a long summer vacation, we are bound to love the summer, right? Um, Summer's here. It seems like just a few weeks ago when I was sitting here and talking about how cold it is and how I haven't seen the sun in ages, and now I see the sun every day. So, that's how fast things change. And I need to remember that right now because I got in an accident, not a road accident, but an accident nonetheless. And I got injured, and that's why I'm on bed rest and not really able to do a lot at the moment, but I have been reading. So, before I tell you about all the books that I'm planning to read, which will be another video, I thought that I'd go over all the books that I have read so far. So, in February, I was going to be reading books about love. I remember that I made a pretty ambitious TBR for the month, but I could only eventually read three books. So the first book that I read in February was Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors, which was this book about two people in an age gap relationship, Cleo and Frank. And they jokingly call each other Cleopatra and Frankenstein. And all that I really actually got from that book was that, as per this author, everyone in New York drinks and does drugs. Also, there was a little bit of animal abuse, accidental animal abuse in there. So as you can guess, as you can probably guess, I didn't really enjoy that book that much. I have been trying to read more of other genres other than fantasy to try to get some other perspectives. And maybe because this was a new kind of book for me, or maybe because I just genuinely didn't like those people. Whatever the reason, I didn't really like this book that much. Then the second book that I read was All About Love by Dolly Alderton. And now this is a book that I really, really enjoyed. So the book is called All About Love, but this actually ties in with the third book that I also read in February, which was uh, All About Love by Bell Hooks. So our concept of love as people is often romantic love, when that's just one of many different types of loves that we experience throughout our lives. We have self love, we've got spirituality, we've got familial love, we've got platonic love, we've got friends, and also a little bit of that love that you fall in love with people on the subway when you just see them and never see them again. That too. So that's what these books kind of challenged and rephrased and talked about. And my favorite thing actually about reading these books at that particular time was that, especially with everything I know about love, is that the book spoke multitudes about love between friends and love with female friends. And I was actually going through a bit of a moment with a friend of mine at that time. And if I hadn't been reading that book, I don't think we would have been able to resolve it quite as quickly as we did. Because every time I would sit down and journal and try to process what was going on, I was like, but wait, she's my friend. She's probably going through something, and that's why she's acting this way. And that was all that it was. And yeah, so I'm really glad that I read that book. With All About Love, it was less of a memoir and more of an essay collection, I would say. And I really enjoyed it up until the part where she started talking about angels. And maybe it's because I'm not Christian, or maybe it's because I'm not a really religious person as such. I didn't really vibe with it. So those are the books that I read in February, and now on to March. Right. So now we're going to talk about the books that I read in March. And yes, I've lost the British accent, but I can get it back. But I don't think that I'm gonna, but I think it's creeping back. Oh my god, why did I think of it? Anyway, this is like the game. You lose it as soon as you think about it. So, yeah, we're back with a British accent. And yes, so I'm back in my room with my legs stretched out right in front of me and bed rest, as mentioned before. Right. So we're going to talk about the books that I read in March, and some of these are books that actually I wanted to read in February itself. So this is like my February TBR kind of spilled over into March, and because I got injured in March, I kind of stopped reading after I read these three books. Um, and I'm gonna get back into reading, or I'm just getting back into reading now, a month or so later. So there's that. But I did read three books, and in February I was actively reading, and I still managed to only read three books, so I guess that's good. So the first book that I read in March is actually the first book that I technically completed in March because I started reading this in February, and that is The Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey. And it's such a cute, sweet, I was gonna say sweet. It's such a sweet book, and it's about this girl who has she calls it the trifecta, which is just three tragedies happening to her all at once or like one after the other. And she kind of loses herself in the wake of those three things in such a way that her family sends her from Miami, Florida, to some bleak town in the UK, and she's not prepared for that. But while over there, she finds herself again. She finds these wonderful people. She rediscovers humanity, and she realizes that there's more than one way to move forward in life. It doesn't all have to be all the plans that you've made once. You change, things change, people change. So it was a really, really nice and heartwarming book to read, and I just love it. I am obsessed with that book. And the second book that I read in March was the sequel for this book. So I was actually reading a Cuban Girl's Guide so that I could read the second book, which is A British Girl's Guide to Hurricanes and Heartbreak. So it's not exactly a sequel, it's the story of one of the side characters from the first book. So it's about this girl called Flora, and again, she has something terrible happen in her life. She loses her mom, and this book is about her dealing with that grief, coming to terms with all those things, growing up a little bit. And this is also a very heartwarming book. It's about family and friends and people coming together to help people through a tough time. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one, but I think that that's because when I read the first one, I was actually kind of losing my faith in humanity, and I really needed that book at that moment. So that combination of reading a book at a time when you need it did not hit as hard as it did for the first one with the second, but I loved it. I was really happy to have read that book. And then the first and then the third book that I read in March was Funny Story by Emily Henry. Not me forgetting the plot of Funny Story for a second. Um, yeah, it's a funny story actually. So there's this chick, she has a fiance who goes on his bachelor's party, and he comes back and he's like, babe, I actually love my childhood best friend, so toodaloo. And that poor girl, her entire life kind of shatters from that moment onwards. And do you know who she moves in with? Who's the first person that she finds with a flat that she can get into? The fiance's childhood best friend's ex-boyfriend, or like the guy that she dumped to get with this girl's fiance. So yeah, it's a funny story. And obviously, because it's an Emily Henry book, they end up together. But it's all about the journey. You know, when you're picking up an Emily Henry book, that it's gonna be a romance. But there's a second book that I've read by her, and I really enjoyed it. My friend had been recommending this to me since last year, I believe, like maybe August or something. And it was like on my radar, but I actually just ended up buying it at the book fair this year. And I'm really grateful that I read it. I loved it. I had had that injury by that point, and it was nice to have a cutesy little romance where no one's, well, I can't say that. I was gonna say it's nice to have a cute little romance where no one's plans are falling apart, but that's not true. So I guess it's nice to have a cutesy little romance with people whose plans and like life plans and stuff are also falling apart, like mine did after I had this injury. But it worked out for them. So hopefully it'll work out for me too. I just can't skip ahead the way the characters can with, it being a Sunday one day and then the next Saturday or like 2 weeks later on the next page. So maybe this is a very interesting story and stuff is falling apart just to come back together. Like the books that I read in March that I really enjoyed, and I am just realizing this right now as I'm talking to you about those books, is all books where people had very set plans and then something tragic happened to them and then they made it through. Books, man. Books will get you through life. I love reading. Okay, so that's that for this video. And I am making a TBR, but because I don't know how much I'll be able to read given that things are a bit up in the air right now. So for the first time in my life, I'm not gonna make like a monthly TBR. I'm gonna make like a seasonal TBR or like a this is what's next kind of TBR, where I might not even be tied down by the season with what I'm gonna read next. So I'll see you in that video. Bye.